to introduce Reverend Vera McNally, and she is going to speak to us about faith, the invisible bridge to the infinite. Reverend Vera.
Good morning. What a beautiful day. Okay, if we'd just like to take a deep breath and release and know that there is one presence, one power, one infinite love, infinite wisdom moving through all of life, fully present here and now. Each of us is a radiant expression of the divine, gathered by divine choice to remember us in our truth, to help us grow and to renew. I know this service is blessed, the words spoken today and the music shared, the hearts are opened, healing happens and clarity comes and love is felt. We are connected, supported, and guided. I give thanks for the sacred time together and for the power of love that guides us always, and so it is. Well, thank you very much for joining me today as we embark on a thoughtful journey exploring the spiritual law of faith. Whether you hold religious beliefs or spiritual principles, or simply seek hope and meaning in a complex world, faith is a universal concept that touches every life. Ernest Holmes once wrote, "Faith is a mental attitude which is so convinced of its own idea, which so completely accepts it, that any contradiction is unthinkable and impossible." Although we cannot see, feel, or taste faith, what is it exactly? At its simplest, faith can be defined as a deep trust or confidence in something or someone, often despite the absence of concrete evidence. For some, it is a faith in a higher power, in humanity, or even in oneself. For others, faith is less about belief and more about action, about living in a way that reflects hope, trust, and conviction. But faith is not mere optimism. While optimism expects the best, faith is willing to persist, even when the best seems impossible. It is the quiet strength that compels us to keep going in face of adversity and in the inner compass that guides us through the unknown. In The Science of Mind on page 159, Ernest Holmes puts it this way: "In order to have faith, we must have conviction that all is well. To keep faith, we must allow nothing to enter our thoughts which will weaken this conviction. Faith is built upon belief, acceptance, and trust." Now let's look at faith throughout history. Faith has been the driving force in human history. It has inspired individuals to act of courage, compassion, and sacrifice. It has been the foundation of civilizations, the sparks behind revolutions, and balm that has soothed countless aching hearts. Think of the explorers, Columbus in 1942, when everybody told him the ocean was flat, the world was flat. There's no way. If you keep going that way, you're going to fall off the end of the earth. But he ignored them. Not knowing what lay beyond the horizon, he trusted, and what he discovered was America. What he thought was America, but it was actually India to begin with. And then explorers kept going on more and more. And look what we have today. Consider the inventors and the dreamers. Thomas Edison in 1879 invented the light bulb. Graham Bell in 1876 invented the telephone, and from there now we have cell phones which control our lives. Isn't that wonderful? In 1903, the Wright brothers invented the airplane and flew the first successful airplane. So our world from that time in 1903 was very small, and now we can go anywhere in the world in a matter of 24 hours. You can be right out in New Zealand or Australia. These individuals believed in the impossibilities others could not see. Through the ages, faith has moved people to build, to create, and to believe in a brighter future. In times of war and peace, Faith has unified communities, provided solace, and during moments of progress and setbacks, faith has been the anchor for individuals and societies alike. Faith does take on many forms. For some, it is rooted in religious or spiritual practices. I believe in God, Great Spirit, divine mind, or a higher power. For others, faith emerges from philosophy, science, or a sense of connection to the universe. There are those whose faith is deeply personal, shaped by life experiences, relationships, or even the resilience of the human spirit. Let's pause for a moment and consider, what does faith look like in your life? In the quiet trust that things will work out? Do you feel that when you go into quiet, that you have that faith? Is it the courage to step forward even when you're unsure? We're always scared of what's the unknown, but with faith, you step forward. And that's what Columbus did. He stepped forward and sailed, and he didn't fall off the end of the earth. Is it the hope you carry for loved ones, for your community, and for the world? Spiritual faith is the most recognized form. It provides structure, meaning, and moral guidance to billions of people worldwide. Through stories, rituals, and traditions, faith connects generations and often comforts in times of sorrow and celebrations of joy. Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7 says, "For we live by faith, not by sight." This simple yet profound statement reminds believers that spiritual living transcends the physical senses. Faith guides decisions, perceptions, actions, calling us to trust Spirit's wisdom over our own eyes. Consider how faith communities rally around those in need, create space for worship and reflection, and carry forward ancient teachings that continue to inspire today. Ernest Holmes believed faith thrives in the spiritual community where people are uplifted, are prayed for, and spiritually nourished together. Sometimes faith is found in trust we place in others. Families, friendships, and communities are built on faith that we will support, understand, and care for one another. The kind of faith is tested in hard times, but it is often strengthened through the acts of kindness, through forgiveness, and solidarity. Equally important is faith in oneself. To pursue a goal, to overcome challenges, or to recover from a failure or from an illness, we must believe in our abilities and our potential. Self-faith is not arrogance, but rather a humble acknowledgement of our capacity to grow and change. Ernest Holmes clarifies this on page 164 in Science of Mind. There is no one who believes more in faith, more in prayers, or more in necessity of the divine will being done than he, the individual who practices daily the principles of Science of Mind. We have challenges with faith as well. It would be misleading to discuss faith without recognizing these challenges. Faith is not a guarantee of ease or certainty. Faith often grows strongest in the soil of doubt, adversity, and struggle. We encounter moments when our beliefs are shaken, when tragedy strikes unexpectedly, or when the world's suffering feels overwhelming. In these moments, it is natural to question, why should I keep believing? And we've all gone through this, like when something comes up in your life and it's like you hit a wall, a solid wall, and it's like, but I trusted. I'm hoping. How can we hold out to hope? We got to step back, take a deep breath, and trust. But perhaps in these very moments that faith provides its true value. It teaches us to persevere, to seek meaning, and to find light in the darkest of times. One such story was 25 years ago. My grandson Talon was born 3 months premature. He was a tiny little warrior who weighed all of 2 pounds and 3 ounces and was basically about 14 inches long. That was it. Very fragile, but he was full of life. He came out screaming, just screaming. And I don't know if he was happy being here or he wasn't happy being here, but the doctors quickly discovered, though, that he had a hole in his heart and he had other complications. And he was too small to have surgery at that particular time. So the doctor said, well, once he gains a little bit more strength, gains a little bit more weight, that he would definitely need to have surgery. And so, of course, Mom and Dad are panicking, and Grandma's like, oh, heart's pounding. And so I had to step back. And take a deep breath. And I had to then trust in my faith in knowing that Spirit works through prayer. So I immediately got on the phone, and I phoned all my friends and family and strangers and whoever I could convince. So together we started a prayer treatment for Talon. We held Talon in light and love, and we had unwavering faith that he would make it through. And lo and behold, about 6 weeks later, the doctor comes in and takes this little tiny body who had gained weight and stuff, and he was gone for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and now we're worried, right? So I think, oh my, what's happening? And I just said, okay, just breathe, deep breath, have faith, prayer works. The doctor comes back and says, well, I got some news for you. And when they say that, he didn't say good news or bad news. He just said, I got news for you. He says he's not going to need the surgery. The hole in his heart is starting to heal. Yeah, it was amazing. He still had a few other complications and stuff that he said, but he said right now he's out of the woods. He said, I don't know what happened. He said, I can't say what happened. He said, whatever you guys are doing, he said, keep doing it. And I said, that's prayer. And he said, well, keep doing it. He said, don't stop. So he finally, after 3 months, he was released and doing very, very well. This year, he turned 25. He is just about 6 foot tall, and he's still very skinny, though. But he eats like a horse, so he's very healthy. So through prayer and through faith, we stood our ground. And it was, I would like to say it was a miracle, but we know that when we do prayer and we trust in Spirit, it is just life, trusting in life. So some other stories to consider is the individual who loses their job but retains faith and new opportunities will arise, and through persistence and openness finds a new calling. This happened to me when this had been about 15 years ago. And I was working a job, and I was working in construction, and I was reading blueprints, and I was interior finishing in the business I was at. And I was so busy, we were so busy, and it was hard to get staff at that time because the industry was booming. I was working 12 hours, 7 days a week, and I was just burning out. I was burning out, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I went to my boss and said, I need help. And he said, well, we've been trying to find somebody. And he said, right now, you're just going to have to suck it up. I thought, I don't think so. I really don't think so. So I went home and I did some thinking, and I had to really do some deep, seriously thinking. I thought, well, I've got some money saved up, and maybe it's time to do something different. So I went back to my boss and said, I'd like to give you my 2-week notice. Well, he hit the panic button and said, but, and I said, no, there's my 2-week notice, I'm done. He said, now you're going to be forced to find somebody. And he did. He eventually did find somebody. But I went home and took a month off and did nothing, just regenerated, and after a month, I started hitting panic. I thought, oh, now what am I going to do? I'm too young to retire. Can't afford to retire. So now what do I do? So I went into my little room. I have a little room there, and I sat there and I prayed. I did spiritual mind treatment, and I said, okay, I want to do something different. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something different. And before I moved back to Calgary, a pastor there said to me, you're going to be working with homeless people. I thought, yeah, I don't think so. I said, I don't think so. I don't have the calling. It's not something I wanted to do. And so another month went by, and the money's starting to dwindle a little bit, and I'm thinking, now I'm hitting panic. I better do something. So I went online and looked for a job, and there's this job, and it's 3 nights a week, 12-hour shifts. You get 4 days off. I thought, oh, this is great. Well, guess what? It happened to be working at the Mustard Seed, who works with homeless people. So I had to phone up and say, yeah, you're right, I owe you a coffee. But in faith, I stayed there and knew that I would find something. It was totally different than anything I've ever done. Totally different than anything I've done. And it was one of the greatest jobs I ever had. I mean, I've had some fantastic jobs, but it was one of the greatest jobs I had. So through faith and staying true to myself, I didn't go back to the construction world, because that's a hard place to work in. It is, especially for a female. You know, it's a man's world, really. It's starting to change a lot, but it is. Another thing to think about is activists who, even in the face of injustice, maintain faith in the possibility of change, working tirelessly to create a better world for all. And this happened in COVID. When COVID hit, and the nurses were, I don't know if it happened here in Red Deer, but in Calgary, the nurses, they would march down the street and they'd have pans and they'd be banging on pots and pans and make bells and making a lot of noise. And the whole community rallied together for the nurses, because nurses were working night and day, and they were getting, they were sick, they were short-staffed because of COVID. But they rallied together. They had the faith that things would change, and they did. So these examples remind us that faith is not passive. It is a living, breathing force that propels us to act, to serve, and to hope. Faith and doubt is a two sides of a coin. Ernest Holmes says on page 158, since faith is quality unconfined to age or station, it may be ours today as much as it has been any man's at any time. We cannot go through a harder time today, a longer or darker night than has ever been experienced before. It often seems darker because we have lost faith, the beacon of light. If one will have faith in himself, faith in his fellow man, in the universe, and in God, that faith will light the place in which he finds himself. And by the light of this faith, he will be able to see that all is good, and the light shed by this faith will light the way for others. We become conscious of darkness only when we are without faith, for faith is ever the light of our day, and the light of our way, making that way clearly visible to us, even when all others, it may be beset with obstacles and ongoing rough. So doubt is not a threat to faith, but a part of its journey. It's through our questions and uncertainties that faith is tested, refined, and strengthened. For many, it's doubt that gives its depth, making it more real and resilient. Great thinkers and spiritual leaders throughout history have struggled with doubt. Their journeys remind us that it's okay to question, to explore, and to seek deeper meaning. Mother Teresa, I'm quite sure everybody knows Mother Teresa, remarkable soul, struggled with doubt and melancholy for years. Despite a wholehearted commitment to serve Jesus in the most difficult situations one could possibly find on earth, she went years without hearing from God, and at times wrote in her journal that she even wondered about his existence. Yet Mother Teresa never gave up faith, despite her depressions, God's persistent silence, and her doubt over whether he saw her every day as she followed his command to care for his most destitute children. Wayne Dyer expands on this beautifully. Faith is a complete resilience on the power and goodness of spirit and the firm belief that you are always connected to this goodness. Affirm your faith, not your doubt. So what are practical ways that we can live, have faith, and cultivate in our lives? Reflection. Take time for quiet contemplation, meditation, and prayer. These practices help us connect with our innermost beliefs and values. Community. Surround yourself with supportive people who encourage and uplift you. Shared faith in its many forms, it strengthens in community, such as our community here. Acts of kindness. Living out our beliefs with compassion and love reinforces our faith and inspires others. Lifelong learning. Read, discuss, and explore new perspectives. Openness to growth sustains a living faith. Resilience. Embrace challenges as opportunities for faith to grow. Remember, faith is not the absence of fear, but the courage to move forward despite of it. Faith has the power to transform not only individuals, but entire societies. It fuels acts of charity, inspires justice movements, and fosters reconciliation and healing. It helps us to see beyond the immediate and envision the possible. When we act from faith, we become beacons of hope for those around us. Our words, our choices, our lives can become testimonies to enduring power of trust, hope, and love. What does faith look like in my life? It is the unseen thread that connects past to future, myself to others, earth to sky. It is a resolve to start anew, to give grace to forgive, the wonder that opens my eyes each morning. It is a courage to hope in the darkness, the humility to admit weakness, to strengthen to keep going. Faith is not always easy, nor is it always certain, but it is enough to sustain, to inspire, and to transform. Each morning that I wake up, I thank God that I'm here, that I get to take another breath. Sometimes it's not very comfortable, especially when you're not feeling well. It's just like, oh, no. But I have the faith to get out of bed and move forward, to do what is necessary, to see the people I need to see, and to encourage others to keep going forward. Because life is beautiful. Even in the challenges that we have, life is beautiful. Step back into the past and look at all those beautiful memories you have that you get to bring into this moment. And you get to carry those beautiful memories into your future. As we go forward today, remember in the end, faith is less a destination than a journey. A path traced in footsteps, each one an act of trust and promise of what might be. It is perhaps the most human of endeavors to believe against odds that life is good and that love prevails, that hope endures. And in this belief, too, find not only meaning, but joy. So I invite you to reflect. What does faith look like to you in your life? Where does it show up in your life? Because you know what? It shows up in our life every day. Every day. When I go out and drive on the roads, I have faith that I'm going to be okay. And even if I get a little ranty at drivers, I just roll my window up. I have faith that they won't hear me. They just think I'm singing to a wonderful tune on my radio. So we have faith that we're going to be okay when we drive. We have faith when we get up in the morning that the day is going to be good. We have faith that Mother Earth is going to sustain us. Even through all the devastation that's going on right now, we can look at that as devastation, or we can look at it we need the moisture. It is raining a lot in a lot of countries. There's been a lot of floods. But like in California and Florida, it's very dry. They need the moisture. So is it devastation or is it a blessing? We have to look at it that way too. So how does faith shape your story? Because we all have a story, and it's all beautiful. And how might you nurture it and in yourself and others in the days ahead? May faith, whatever form it takes for you, be a guiding light in your journey, giving you strength, peace, hope, now and always. In your programs, there is it's a blue sheet. And I'd like you to keep this. It's called The Thread of Faith, and I'm going to read it to you. It's by an unknown author. Faith is a thread that holds us tight when all around us fades from sight. It whispers low, yet speaks so true. I am with you, guiding through. Not built on proof or worldly signs, but rooted deep in sacred times. It blooms in darkness, calm and still, a quiet trust, a holy will. When mountains rise and valleys fall, when prayers feel lost beyond the wall. Faith is a fire that gently glows, a light within that always knows. It teaches hearts to rise again, to walk through loss, to smile through pain. It doesn't always ask us not to cry, just lift our gaze back to the sky. So let me lean into that grace that holds me in its soft embrace. For come what may, I choose to be a soul of faith, forever free. And so it is.